Chapter 8. Express Yourself. The school was suddenly like a ghost town. Everyone who had to catch a bus had left. The only stragglers were pupils who were staying late to use the computer room, and the students who lived nearby and had nowhere else better to be. After Hunter had finished making plans with Solomon and Olivia, he decided to take a shortcut past the swimming pool, which was in the school's most southern block, then through a corridor which led to the library and computer room that was situated underneath the food technology and art room, then out past the double doors that led to the staff car park. As he walked down the side of the pool, past a small cupboard filled with swimming aids, he began to chant, "And the winner is Hunter! The crowd goes wild for this guy. He's broken the record for coolness and handsomeness in just one single attempt. What will he do next?" Amusing himself, he listened to the acoustics in the tiled enclosure. Still dressed in his PE kit, a white polo shirt and black shorts, he was now in the southwest block and was just about to turn to go when a familiar voice intervened. "Ah, Hunter, très bon! It must be my lucky day. Would you be a gentleman and help me with these bags, s'il vous plaît?" Miss Cockleton, the art teacher, with her mishmash colours, looked like a day at the seaside. A golden yellow skirt, navy belt, light blue jumper, and her signature beret was a brilliant white and puffed up like a cloud. As she walked, an entourage of different-sized suitcases followed her. Some were tartan, the largest case was hot pink, and completely covered in black zips. "What's in the cases?" Hunter asked. The art teacher opened a compartment of one of the tartan bags, put her hand inside, and revealed a few twigs and leaves. "What I have in these bags are tools to craft beauty and inspire the mind." Students were told that they were going to be taking a leaf out of Andy Goldsworthy's book to create art out of nature, but Hunter didn't think she meant it that literally. He trekked up the towering grey stairs, with 2 bags in each hand and the colossal pink case strapped to his back. Hunter was stronger than most 14-year-olds, but after he had pushed himself to beat Mason in the race, he was sure that Miss Cockleton had actually packed the tree, because foliage was not this heavy. Managing to get to the top, Hunter leant over, taking deep breaths, but as the nearly retired art teacher waddled up the stairs carrying the rest of the bags, Hunter didn't want to appear weak and pushed out his chest. "Where would you like them, ma'am?" he inquired nonchalantly. Impressed, Miss Cockleton congratulated her helper. She put a hand to her big rosy cheek, narrowly missing her spectacles. My, aren't you the alpha male?" she said admiringly. Utterly exhausted, Hunter still managed a gigantic pleased grin, unable to resist the flattery. This was validation of his status at school. Following her lead, Hunter was directed to the door on the left at the back of the art room. He slid gingerly between the popular kids' table and the square set of 4 in the middle, trying not to bash his cargo. Glad, finally, to relieve himself of his dead weight, he dumped the cases in the art supply cupboard and tried to close the door, but was unable to, due to all the suitcases. Feeling 1,000,000 times lighter, he left the cupboard blocked and let out a short, sharp breath. Still fishing for information on the notorious Brian Headcase Harrington, he decided to make small talk with the eccentric teacher. Noticing a pile of greyish-white pulp on the centre table, he asked, "Can't make pottery, so you're reduced to papier-mâché?" "Afraid so," the art teacher said glumly. "I swear the kiln is leaking gas, but they assure me it's not. My keen sense of smell tells me different." Surely she didn't have a keen sense of anything, Hunter thought. All the incense she burnt would have put paid to that. Miss Cockleton ambled over to the middle tables to join Hunter, looking at the mound of mush, and told him, "You have become my muse, young man. Because of you, the Year 9s and I have been inspired to create a tribute to the great artist Georgia O'Keeffe." The artist who drew a flower large enough to make people take notice of its beauty. He remembered back to Monday's lesson, when he accidentally gave a correct answer to one of Miss Cockleton's "no answer is wrong" questions. "We are going to make a huge chrysalis, a vessel of remarkable transformation. This will be a sculpture that will change the way the students see nature," she beamed. Hunter now stood, nodding as his teacher went off on a tangent about how school is a sort of metaphor for a chrysalis. "When we leave here, we are so very different from how we first started. So, not long now. In 8 months' time, when you retire, you'll be living the crazy jet-set life, Hunter asked, trying to change the subject. The tired-looking lady smiled back. No flying for me, my dear. If mankind was meant to fly, then nature would have given us wings. I'm not a fan of sailing either, as I get awful seasickness. I have to stay close to home and look after my babies. Babies? Hunter asked, confused. Miss Cockleton had never had children, or so he thought, but then remembered she did, however, have 6 cats. With the bout of local catnappings, Hunter inquired, Your cats are all okay? You haven't lost any, have you? My precious darlings are right where they should be, Miss Cockleton informed him, impressed that her student was so thoughtful, thinking of her pet's welfare. She continued, I'm staying put, living out my remaining days in the place I love, and maybe I'll even create a masterpiece or make something that will change the world. So, what are you going to paint? Asked the sly youngster, feigning interest, creeping even further onto his teacher's good side. Miss Cockleton shrugged her shoulders and raised her eyebrows, her beret bobbing up and down ever so slightly. I don't have to limit myself to just paint, she corrected him. You're a very bright young man, but you can't learn everything from a textbook. You have to feel what is inside your very core, your being. Only you can tell yourself what you feel, and when others are inspired to feel the same about a piece of art, then you have the makings of something special. Hunter contemplated this for a while. Miss Cockleton pointed to him. That is what your little lady friend, Miss Davenport, fails to see. What a load of old claptrap, barked the school's PE teacher as he stood in the doorway. The kids at this school need to convey their hostility and how they feel on the pitch through sports, not through this flowery rubbish. Miss Cockleton looked up, most unimpressed, and waved the back of her hand at him in a gesture to go away. But the Rottweiler walked into the art room, inspecting every corner. He had wondered what on earth Hunter was doing when he spotted him carrying all those suitcases up the stairs. He stood his ground, not budging. It had come down to a difference of opinions, and Miss Cockleton was tired of being shunned by the ignorant primitives like Gary Tyler for speaking her mind. She decided to take him on in a battle of words to see who could influence Hunter, a pupil equally gifted in physical and mental attributes. She began, Well, Mr. Tyler wouldn't want to admit this, but all sports are in fact a form of art. The way you move to flow with the ball, your aggression and passion on the pitch. When you think about it, the likes of football and rugby are one big ballet. Mr. Tyler was getting angry. Nobody compared his beloved sports to ballet, especially not rugby. When she had made her point, she delivered the killing blow. Hunter thinks with his head and heart. He surpassed you. He's probably better than you when you were his age. Utterly disgusted, the Rottweiler was not going to lie down like a domesticated animal. He posed his counter-argument, which was also indirectly aimed at Hunter, just in case he got overly ambitious ideas. A team is like a pack. In the wild, the problem with young pups is, if they play being the big dog too soon and try to take over, they may find themselves exiled from the pack and left to die of starvation. Before Miss Cockleton could reply, he walked back to the door. Anyway, I'm only here under the headmaster's request to remind you we have a teachers' meeting in an hour. Satisfied she was the victor in this debate, she politely and confidently said, Yes, thank you, I am quite aware of that. Hunter, after this weekend, you need to forget about your party and Olivia Davenport and focus on the stuff that really matters, commanded Mr. Tyler, staring Hunter in the eye before sulking off. He now saw Miss Cockleton in a new light. He was very impressed. Only once before had he seen someone take on the Rottweiler and win, and that was Mrs. McQueen. He wasn't going to admit to Mason that he thought his mum was awesome, though, when it was a lot more fun to poke fun at him for getting his mum to defend him. With Miss Cockleton feeling uplifted, he asked, Miss, you've worked here, forever. What was Brian Harrington really like? Acting disappointed, she enlightened her new protégé. Head Case Harrington is nothing more than a fairy tale to scare you kids and keep you on your best behaviour. And I haven't worked here that long. But Hunter wasn't buying it. She had been here long enough to live through a large part of the history of the school. Really? Then why did our headmaster tell me he was our caretaker until he, was found in the cupboard in such a state. Annoyed at the headmaster, she propped herself against the table, pushed her glasses closer to her face. Mr. Rowland has no right to expose that unfortunate man's events like a circus. You need to understand the whole story and not jump to ridiculous conclusions. So listen up and pay attention. Hunter's trap had been sprung. She had played straight into his hands, and he too positioned himself alongside a table, getting comfy as Miss Cockleton told him the complete history of Darwin Grammar's ill-fated caretaker. Brian Harrington was born to a respectable, hard-working family that lived near the centre of town around 54 years ago. When he came of age, he attended Darwin Grammar, like any other normal child. When he finished school, he got a job in agriculture as a farmer and was employed by Mr. Tinker, who owned Tinker's Farm. Raised in the area, he knew all the inhabitants, and nobody had a nasty word to say about the mild-mannered man. Volunteering, he took an active role in the community, spearheading many campaigns, rallying support when the post office or any local amenities were faced with closure. He was a proud community ambassador. Some would say a local hero. Bad fortune struck when Tinker's farm had money issues, and Brian's employer, Mr. Tinker, died. Mr. Tinker's only daughter, Marion, was left to run the business and was forced to close down the farm, making Brian redundant. He bounced back quickly, as Mr. Tinker's nephew offered him a similar job in a nearby village. However, disaster struck again when his boss of 3 years also passed away, and he was once again left unemployed. News of his circumstances flowed quickly throughout the town, and friends of the community tried their best to help their most respected resident find a new occupation. When the headmaster of the school at the time, Mr. Rowland's predecessor, was informed, he decided that Brian Harrington was the ideal candidate for the job of school caretaker. If he wanted the job, then it was his. With all the skills he had acquired throughout his life, he could fix and mend almost anything. This was a blessing to the school, and Brian loved his secure new job, and he was happy, but this was the time his health began to deteriorate. Forgetting to mop a floor or promising to take a look at something was how events first started. Everyone has off days, and nobody's perfect though. He was as hard-working as they come, and never took a day off sick in his life. Odd behaviour started to become routine. He was talking to himself, even arguing in some cases. Pupils saw him growling, chasing cats, dogs and pigeons off the school field. Most kids just giggled, but when he noticed them laughing at him, he turned his hostilities towards them, shooting them dark looks. Parents warned them to leave him alone to do his job, and discarded their children's words of warnings as tall tales. More incidents occurred, as Brian Harrington became more and more accident-prone, but it was overlooked due to his impeccable record. The day people realised what was happening was the day that he finally snapped, and the past chain of events sprung into view for all to see. He had just mopped when a couple of girls who were leaving late walked across the clean corridor floor with muddy shoes. Throwing the mop at one and kicking the bucket at another, he made crazy, inhuman sounds and started to punch his temples with his fists. Frightened, the girls shook nervously. He told them to run fast, as far away as possible, as he would not be responsible for his actions, and the girls screamed and scattered to the nearest phone box to call the police. When the police arrived, they searched the school, following the trail of carnage the caretaker had left. Windows were smashed, posters and notices ripped and thrown to the ground. They found fingernail marks clawed into a corridor wall, which led them like a trail to the caretaker's cupboard, in which they found his body on the floor. He was covered in a wash of disinfectant bottles and other cleaning fluids. He had suffered a complete mental breakdown and was catatonic, void of any signs of the person he once had ever been. Every positive can be turned into a negative. This applies even to you, Miss Cockleton said. When you're idolised, everything else gets overlooked. By the time you realise, it's too late. You have missed out. She then got up from the table and walked over, closer to Hunter. Their reflections were caught in Abigail Newman's shiny banner hanging on the wall. My point is, appearances can be deceptive. Don't let them only see your popular side and the hair, she implored. What do you mean, they only see the hair? Hunter asked. Nobody sees the real you. Your petit mohawk, for example. Just like most birds in the wild, using their plumage to attract a mate, The taller, the more striking the feathers, the more virile and dominant you are. We are not mere animals, and we have more than one purpose in life, not just to ensure the survival of our species. Who cares if you're the largest of the silverback gorillas, the strongest lion, or the turtle with the longest neck? Be more than feathers. I have worked here for many years, and teaching pupils like you has been a real privilege. You have an amazing head on those shoulders. Don't let it go to waste. Be who you are, not what others want you to be. Hunter looked confused. So you're saying I should grow a bigger mohawk? She opened her arms wide and enthusiastically suggested, Write the great British novel or take up dancing. The world is your oyster, Monsieur Montero. And if it helps you to express yourself, then do it. She waddled back to her desk, and picking up some paperwork, she sauntered over to the windows. With her back towards him, she put the paperwork in order. She stared out, surveying the view, and declared, I have a plan, so that the creative yearnings of future children at this school will never be stunted. The one thing I will do before I leave is to make sure my precious art department is cared for. Art is always the first casualty to feel the wrath of the school's budget cuts. Miss Cockleton thanked Hunter for his assistance, disappearing into her office. He finally left to go home before she lit up a joss stick, or she changed her mind and asked him to move the cases again. He glanced at his image in the shiny material. Making sure his teacher wasn't watching, he tried to adjust his hair so his mohawk was as tall and as prominent as possible, giving himself a reflected ego boost, but was too wrapped up in his own vanity to notice the stunned, white-faced Chloe Draper slowly munching on a strawberry lace. She had been stood behind the door the entire time, and had been in earshot of the whole conversation. Unable to believe what she'd heard about Headcase Harrington, she murmured, Oh my gosh, and out of sheer habit, when she finished off a packet of her favourite sweets, screwed up the plastic wrapper. It made a disruptive, noticeable crackle. Realising that Hunter was no more than 2 meters away, she quickly bolted into the food technology room before she was discovered. Hunter, having his concentration disturbed, swiftly moved over to where the rustle had come from, but there was nothing. About to abandon the search for the source of the sound, he then felt a sense of someone panicking, and then he heard a door close in the room opposite. Ha! Got you! Listening in on other people's conversations? Shame on you! Sweeping through the supposed vacant classroom, he opened every door as he progressed around the room, looking for anywhere the eavesdropper could be hiding, and laughing at the failed attempt of somebody's cooking that was squashed on the table, until he came across the food supply cupboard, which a sense of suspicion was emanating from. Ready to strike like a predator as soon as he sprung open the door, he yelled, Found you! But to his dismay, it was filled with plastic containers and the basic ingredients for cooking. But like the song from an old children's television show, he began to sing, One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong. He knelt down to retrieve this curious object, smirked, and dropped it into his bag.